Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your World show. I am one of your co-hosts, Chris Alba. Larkin will be on the show shortly. She's just putting a horse up, and then she's going to join us. Today we have an exciting show. We're going to talk about finding acceptance in the circumstances of now. And for me, as I coach on the universal principles of gratitude, awareness, unity, growth, energy, acceptance is part of the awareness principle. Accepting what has happened, accepting the accountability and responsibility for the parts that we've played in life to be where we are in this moment, and then the responsibility to move beyond this moment in a higher frequency way. Thinking a little differently, feeling a little bit differently about and behaving differently based on the impacts that we've had in our past. I think this life is about growth. That's part of the principles, right? The principle of growth is we're always growing one way or another. They say you can grow better or you can grow bitter, but either way, you're going to grow. And what I mean by that is, are we going to grow through the evolutionary process of evolving, of surrendering the thoughts, the feelings, the behaviors, the identities that no longer serve us, so then we can be present to a new way of being ourselves, a new way of communicating and expressing ourselves in the relationship of life. And I think this is an important part of it, is finding that acceptance. Unfortunately, not everything goes as we plan. We make commitments, we make plans, we create these goals, these ways of moving forward into the void of the unknown futures, right? And we feel really good about what we're creating and what we're moving towards. And this could be in an area of our life, whether it's personal, professional, sexual, financial, it's all on how we relate. The meaning of life is what we create. Unconditional love has no meaning. It's the meaning that we give it that gives love the conditionality of what we're willing and what we're not willing to accept. And the more loving we can be, the more accepting we can be for where we are in the moment, where someone else is in the moment, and understand that we'll naturally. Hey, Natalie. I hope you're having a magical day. And the more acceptance that we have for ourselves and others, the more awareness that we have of our limitations as well as our opportunities to grow. And that is, in my view, the power of the mind. The power of the mind allows us to connect to other timelines, right? Whether it's in the past or whether it's in the future. Our mind can take us from our physical reality of our five senses and move us to another place. And how that feels within us tells us where we still have our work to do, and where the work that we've been doing has been paying off, where we've been growing. It's what we try to talk a little. I try to talk a little bit about physicality because it's easier to identify, to the gym or we're working out or in a healthy way or even an unhealthy way. We can see the results from now our level of acceptance and responsibility to transmute the lower vibrational things into higher vibrational things. If we're eating a lot of processed foods, if we're eating a lot of fast foods and convenient foods and those types of things, because we don't want to take the time, or we don't feel like we have the time to properly prepare proper food, then we're going to create this alibi, this excuse of why it's okay for us to be doing this in the short term. And if it's in the short term, chances are it's not going to have that huge of effect. Now, the challenge being is we get used to, we're habitual creatures, right? So we get used to doing a certain thing, even if it's not benefiting us. We get used to doing it a certain way, and then next thing you know, our subconscious takes over, and then we just have these habits. Whether they're good, bad, indifferent, that just depends on how we view it, how we judge it, how we discern from it, how we're trying to move towards a different thing, right? And that's where the mind comes in and tells us, the stories, or creates the judgments, or creates the alibis or the excuses or the reasonings or the logic behind where we've been or where we are. And, if we continue to stay on that path, then our life isn't going to look much different. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes, what we're doing in our life personally is best as we can do, and we're moving in our highest timeline, and we're creating businesses, we're creating opportunities, we're doing all these various different things, right? And people in our life maybe are causing a little conflict, they're triggering us, they're, those types of things. Now, there's many different ways that we can learn to accept this, whether we say, I accept you for you and where you're at, and I'm not going to allow you to continue to challenge my energy. So I'm going to let you out of my life. I'm just going to let you go. You go on your way and you go live your life the way that you want to go live. And I'm going to go live my life the way that I want to live. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do from time to time. Depending on especially someone's inability to see their own truth, their own acceptances, or what they're not willing to accept, or what they are willing to accept, however you want to look at that, right? Because it really comes down to, if you want to find peace, you want to find love, you want to find happiness, you want to find compassion, it comes through acceptance. It comes through understanding, where someone's thinking, where someone's feeling, even ourselves, that is a momentary truth, an impermanent truth. And we can replace that impermanent truth with a higher realmed one. Why did I quit drinking, in 2016? Well, for me, it wasn't beneficial in my life. It hurt me on a spiritual level, a mental level, a financial level, a professional level. And at the end of the day, I didn't like how I felt. I had fun when I was drunk, right? And that's what most people, oh yeah, that's the fun part. But I wasn't drunk all the time. So I had to deal with the consequences. I had to be responsible for the consequences of my life, why I was intoxicated, why I was overtaken by the spirits, as we would say, right? Because it's causing us to act out of more of our impulsory self. One of the things that I used to say when I drank was, I tend to either be a lover or a fighter, and chances are I'm going to love until I feel threatened. And then that inner wounding that I was carrying at that time could be easily disrupted, and I didn't have the cognitive ability, I didn't have the emotional intelligence, or the maturity at that time in my own life, especially when I was intoxicated, to create conflict resolution when I was under the influence of an alcohol. So for me, it was just a choice. I'm just gonna let that go, because it's not serving me in any really positive way. So that just fell away from me. It was easy for me to quit drinking, and I haven't touched a drop since. Outside of when I'm taking a medicinal tincture, and it was created in a dissolution of alcohol. I know I struggled with that at the very beginning when I started making my reishi tinctures and things like that. I had to use alcohol for the distillation, and I was challenged with the thought of putting alcohol in my body at all. But it was such a minute little thing, and it didn't have that effect on me. So it was kind of like microdosing, I guess. So I let that go. I let that identity go. Plus, I think if I drank a whole bottle to try to get drunk of a reishi tincture or something like that, I'd probably get pretty sick before I got that desired result. So it is what it is. Um, and so the question that I'm trying to pose to you guys, what is your tolerance for acceptance? How do you, you know, it's been in my experience. How do I word this? That when I don't feel accepted for who I am or what I'm doing by someone else, it makes it harder to continuously give in that frequency. Does that make sense? Like if you gave somebody, and this has happened in the past, you give someone money multiple times, or and they might say thank you in the moment, but you don't really feel like they're actually thankful. They're just going through the motion of saying, well, thanks, appreciate it, and then you don't hear from them again. They're gone until they're out of money or until they need something again, and then they reach out and they're like, hey friend, how's things going? Would you be able to help me out again? And if they I know I've been in those situations and I've asked for help and I didn't get help. And it was challenging because, it's like, man, I help people all the time. And now that I'm actually asking for help, it was hard for me to ask for help in the first place. But now that I've actually done it and I got a no, what does this say? Well, the acceptance is that I was being told that I was responsible. I was capable. I had the ability. I had the responsibility to take care of my own life, take care of my own self. And no one, this was told to me by a mentor of mine when I was a teenager. He said, God will never do anything that you can do for yourself. That's why you're here. If God was meant to live your life for you, why would you have a life? You probably wouldn't. So when things don't go the way that I was wanting them to, or desiring them to, or hoping that they would, what I look for is acceptance and an acknowledgement and an allowance for everything to unfold the way it needs to. And that's part of the awareness process. One, you can't be aware that something isn't working to our highest capability if we're not willing to acknowledge our part, the part that we're actually playing, the part that we could be playing but aren't, and then when we bridge those gaps, then we find our truth of what we as individuals need to shift within our lives, whether it's the way our perception, our perspectives on things, our beliefs, change our belief system, like we're owed something, because I don't believe that we're owed anything. We've been given everything. We've been given this life, Pachamama, and Pachamama will give us everything that we need to survive, not thrive in a human man-made society. That is where our separation comes from, when we try to separate ourselves from nature and create these artificial, synthetic ways of living, because we can do that as human beings. The more we get away from our true nature, the more it will be hard to live in integrity of our true holistic wellness. And what that looks like, in my opinion, is that's when we have destructive thoughts, we have self defeating feelings, we have behaviors that are limiting our life in some way, our expression of life, or the way that we're able to live life. Uh, let's see what you got, Natalie. Um, Lent money to your brother several times, and when I put up a firm boundary about getting reimbursed, he stopped calling me. Sucks that we fell a bit apart, but I can see where he's at. Yeah, it is challenging, you know. It's super challenging when we ask someone for help, or someone asks us for help, and we have to put up a little stronger boundaries of, hey, I can't keep enabling you not to be accountable for your own life. I'm compassionate. I'm empathetic to your situation. I want to help. But there comes a time where we have to look at, are we helping, or are we hurting through being oh, I just forgot the word. um, Enabling somebody, because we all fall on hard times, and those of us who say that they've never fallen on a hard time, well, then your time just hasn't come yet. um, you know and everybody has their own version of what that looks like, and that's a beautiful and challenging thing all at once, but it also is what makes our humanity stronger, makes our community stronger, because I could talk about what it's like to go through divorce all day long, but until you go through a divorce, you have no clue. And even though that I could share all that awareness with you, from my perspective of what I went through, and how it's been beneficial, and it's also been challenging, and how it's allowed us to evolve and grow as individuals, as well as our relationship. Um, until you're going through your own version of it, it's hard to see and so that frustrated, that resistant energy, because the energy isn't flowing harmonious, sometimes makes it hard to see um, uh, beyond our pain body, as Eckhart Tolle would say. And our pain body is one of the things that we have to heal to evolve into a higher state of presence, which means people can poke you, people can challenge you, people can call you names or whatever it is that they do. And it doesn't affect you, because you've healed yourself to a level of understanding that that is more of a reflection of where they are in their existence than where you are in yours. That doesn't mean that we didn't do something to trigger them, to cause them to say what they said or do what they did. But the fact is they are free too. And the fact that they chose to do what they did is free will. Finding that acceptance sometimes can be really hard, right? Because you want to, the ego wants to justify, well, I was good to them, I treated them like this, I gave them this, I did this, I was there for them for this. And we tend to get defensive, and then we don't maybe sometimes listen to what they're actually saying, where they don't feel heard, they don't feel safe, they don't feel validated within the relationship that we're at, and we miss those subtle cues. Same thing for ourselves. I mean, we could be saying what and thinking that what we're saying is exactly on point, but if they're not able to hear it in a certain vibration, then they're not going to be able to hear it the way that we're speaking it. And that's where sometimes communication can be a little challenging, and it's more about at that point, because you can't just keep arguing with each other and think then that's going to change things, even though it can. My dad and I used to argue all the time. We call it debating, and we would debate all the time on different views and things like that. And then, an hour or two later, as we're energetically exhausted, we would realize that we were both trying to make a very similar point. We were just saying it from two different ways. Yeah, I agree, Natalie. Enabling people is not the best way to love somebody in any relationship, or support anyone for that matter in a relationship. To a degree of that you're comfortable with. If I had a loved one or a friend that needed a place to stay and needed some food and needed a place to a solid foundation to build their life from. I mean, and I could even say this for relationships. Creating that safe place for us to grow roots and build a solid foundation together. If they start taking advantage of that, yeah, that's when you're going to have to speak up and say, hey, you're taking more than I can give. Energetically, whatever that means. I like to think of everything as an exchange of energy. The give and receive, and if it's not mutual, then it's not sustainable. And that's the key. I've had people stay. We've had people stay with us, and it was a lovely experience. They helped around the house. They helped keep things clean. They, maybe they weren't working outside the house, but they were cooking dinner. They were doing things. They were participating in the community of what we were, right? And that was lovely, and it worked out great. And then there was other people that, they just sat around all the time, and smoked and ate all the food and drank all the drinks. And, you asked them to help out, and they're like, why would I help you? I'm busy, I got plans to go out with my friends or something like that. And that's when you have to look at the energetic exchange. And that's why I don't want to get too caught up in, the enabling and, when to give, when not to give, because the truth is we already know our truth. We already know what's true in the moment. And sometimes we're a little conflicted by it because there's so many teachings. There's so many people telling us what to do, what to think, how to be. And, that's from their level of consciousness. And I respect that. But that's not my walk. My walk is to empower you to make your own choices, to make your own decisions, to create the opportunities for you to grow and be who you are meant to be in relation to us humans and all the other animals and plants and living beings on this planet. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to create awarenesses and empowerment for you, including myself, right? Because I can't give something that I haven't done for myself, to overcome the challenges that we believe we have in life, so we can move beyond that and stop telling that story that keeps us stuck, because it's no one else's fault. It's not the government's, it's not your parents, it's not your job, it's not anything outside of you that keeps you stuck living the life that you're living mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, sexually, all those different ways that we can discern energy. The only thing that keeps us from moving forward is ourselves. and that's the inability or the lack of responsibility to accept our thoughts and our feelings as part of our reality, but not our reality. It is a duality between the seen and the unseen, the sensed and the, and then, well, it's all senses. Whether you sense it with your mind or whether you sense it with touch, it's still a sense, right? But the things that we sense and what we believe is our physical reality can change our conditional reality. Our unconditional nature can never change. It comes from source. It's what makes us all social creatures. And the thing that keeps us from being able to find our nurturing, to find our true nature, is these systems, these man-made, the man-made matrix that we've created to exchange currency in a easier format, I guess would be the easiest way to say that. Because at the end of the day, we're not any more complicated than deer or anything else. We all have to eat. We all need to drink. We all need to fornicate, and we all need to sleep. And the conditions that we do that in, that creates our life circumstances. And I can tell you that I've slept in very fancy places, and I've slept in the dirt, and I've slept in both places quite well. Depending on the circumstances, right? And depending on where I am mentally and emotionally. And, when I was a part of the adult entertainment industry and I was a performer, I used to get flown all over and, get to go to all these expensive places and do all these things. And a lot of times I didn't get to enjoy it because I wasn't with people that I actually enjoyed, including myself. Because I was having to play a role that wasn't my true self. It was a familiar self. It was one that I was good at playing. And that's why I was able to raise to the ranks that I did. But at the same time, it wasn't my true self. And the hard part is recognizing that and then moving through it. I remember in finance, we went camping and whitewater rafting, right? And like that's my element, right? And I'm with all these finance people that most of them had never stayed outside, right? So they were really challenged, and by the circumstances, and I'm doing my thing and having a good time, and all that. And when we got back, my regional vice president congratulated me, and I was like, what are you congratulating me for? What did I do? And he was like, well, you came back. I didn't expect you to. He's like, I honestly thought when you were hanging out with those guys, the rafters, and they were showing you their digs and how they were living, and how all the things were, that you would have just been like, F it, I'm staying here. And maybe if I wasn't married and all that at the time, maybe I would have been, because it sounded pretty sweet, like, oh my God, I just hang out and in nature and get to take people down the river every day. Like, are you kidding me? What a blessing. That's so awesome. What a cool experience to have. And so I mean, I could have seen myself doing that, and a lot of them, I said, well, what do you do in the winter when you can't be doing this? Because this was in West Virginia. And they said, oh, we ski. I was like, well, I don't like skiing, so I'm out. Not that I've ever really snow skied. I'm from Minnesota, and believe it or not, I've never skied a day in my life. And I think it was because when I was a little kid, my aunt hit a tree and really messed herself up pretty good. And my uncle still skis. Him and his wife, ski all over the world. They hella ski, and they do all that stuff, and that's freaking awesome, man. I like to live vicariously through their experiences because it's not one that I've ever had. And that's the beauty of storytelling, is we get to see a glimpse of another reality, right, that we didn't know existed. And finding that acceptance of like, um, we're all here to do different things, and it's through our differences that we're stronger. Our commonalities will keep us together, but it's our acceptance of our differences that allows us to actually grow stronger through a variation rather than um, weakens it, you know. And so it's good to have people in our lives that Greg, you've never done rafting or skiing, huh? Okay. Well, if you ever get the chance, I highly recommend, doing the river rafting. It's a pretty fun time. Um, and um, um, and so it just depends on what you want to. Yeah, yes, Natalie. Acceptance is a very powerful tool. It is one of those master keys, I would call it. And I found a lot of my strife and struggle and stress and all that sometimes comes from the willingness not to let go to things that are no longer harmonious, because I want to make it better. I want to fix it. I want to heal it. I want to repair it. It's part of my inner calling of why I'm here. So sometimes I can tend to hang in there a little bit longer than I should, and or that I should on myself there. So that's why I was trying to, I could shift differently, but I haven't in the past, and it's through my acceptance that not everybody that comes into your life is going to stay in your life. That's helped me let go of that limitation in life. Not that I don't have that desire still. I don't ever want to lose anybody in my life. I would rather them transition out of life, out of this physical reality, than know that they still are alive and I can't talk to them. That bothers me on a deep soul level. In the 3D. Now, I do know that I can communicate through them through telepathy in the higher realms of existence now, because I've learned how to do that. I've developed the skill sets and methods to do that. So I can do that. It still doesn't bring me the satisfaction or the peace or the happiness that just sitting in a room with someone that I love. We don't even have to be talking, just hanging out. That's my stuff. I enjoy that. Having coffee and or a conversation with somebody is one of my favorite things to do. Um, because I like to grow my awareness, and I can grow my awareness through the relations that I have in my life. Because people know things that I don't know, they've experienced things that I haven't experienced. And What a cool thing, what a cool gift that we can give each other, right? Just by doing what we do. Like Greg, I'd love to learn your origin story about what the the all the hand movements and why you created them, and what the purpose is of that. And I know we've talked about it on the podcast in the past about chatting on a Facebook Live or something like that. And I apologize that I have not reached out to create that. So um, I'll get to you, I promise. Um, um, I'm trying to get more comfortable being on a computer and technology, because I want to be everywhere but here. So sometimes I drop the ball on my responsibilities and the things that I can do online because I want to do them offline. Um, it's just my thing. Finger fitness. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm, the dexterity is just amazing. So I love watching your videos. Some of them are a little hard for me to watch because of all the movement that's going on with the effects and things. But that's just me personally. I think it's super cool what you're doing, and I'd love to be able to promote that. Oh, would love to talk to you about doing something new there, Greg. So, would love to hear more about that. So, yeah, let's set something up. We'll get something together. Um, I'll try to reach out tomorrow if that's fair. If not, Thursday, because I'll be back on the computer on Thursday. So, we'll do that. And I don't know, when I talked to Larkin this morning, she seemed like she was going to be on here really fast within the broadcast. And, we were talking about this topic. And I know she's got some input on this, and would love to hear what she has to say when she gets the chance. But that's what sharing what I'm aware of as far as acceptance. It's, not willing to go somewhere mentally, emotionally, or physically takes as much energy as it does to do it, right? And so it's really getting down to the inner reflections of who we are and what we are willing to learn from. What are we willing to grow from? What are we willing to move through? So then that is no longer hindrance. I've shared the stories about my family and the challenges that I've gone through all these different things. And the reason that we are where we are now, which is better than where we were, was because we were all willing to accept that we were not where we wanted to be, and to work on ourselves mentally, emotionally, and behaviorally, so we could move more into an alignment together. And I'm very blessed to have such an amazing family that can tell you, growing up in my 20s and even my 30s, I did not have that viewpoint. I wanted to be anywhere than with my family because I just didn't think they loved me. They didn't accept me. They didn't want me to be me or to do the things that I wanted to do. They just wanted me to live like them. And that wasn't my path. And because I had the tenacity, the resilience, the perseverance to continue on my path, even though there was times that I would settle and I would move into their recommendations or whatever, I had to try them out. I tried them out, not for me. Okay, now I'm going back to what I know. Now I'm going back to, where I want to pursue, where I want to go, where I want to journey, where I want, and I say a lot of I, which is all ego. And I could easily switch that communication around and say spirit led, because I moved within my spirit. I moved towards the things that I felt were more important than my personal hedonistic pleasures. And that's why I it's still spiritual ego. You can't get away from it. But in hindsight, I can see where there was, I could be retired right now. I could be financially abundant had I continued on the path that I was on. I would either be could have either been really highly financially secure and stable, or I'd be dead. And that wasn't something that I was wanting to risk. And I saw the harm that I was creating in my life and other people's lives by creating certain opportunities. and by doing certain things. So I changed my behavior because that was my karma. And I was very blessed to have a few years of really challenging experiences show up in my life, where I got to process that stuff. I got to heal that stuff. I got to move through that and understand that my security does not come from the outside world. My security comes from my inner knowing that no matter what circumstances come up, I'll make it through it. It might not be comfortable. It might not be enjoyable. I might not like it. However, I will survive it. I will overcome through it, and I will do the best that I can, given whatever circumstance that I've got to go through. So that's a blessing. Natalie. Oh, you're totally welcome, Natalie. I totally understand you gotta get back to work too, and thanks for watching the replay. Yeah, it's one of the challenging things about coming on the time that we come on. We understand that people have day jobs and all that kind of stuff, and I know when I studied, when to do podcasts and how to do podcasts and all that, it was suggested to do other times, and maybe I would have more live viewers at that time, maybe. But at the same time, this is what is the most convenient for myself and Larkin. So since we're the ones holding the space and we're doing this on a consistent basis, that's where we have to go, is what works for us. And that's just a level of acceptance. I accept that I'm not going to have 600 people on a live broadcast at noon on Tuesday. I accept that. And I accept that people will watch it if they feel called to watch it. And, no amount of sharing and marketing and promoting and, creating all these marketing traps and egoic traps and, bait and switch and all that kind of stuff that, that we learn through sales and marketing is gonna get me the authenticity that I'm looking for. People will listen when they are ready to listen. People are ready to do when they're ready to do, and we can't force that. We can't force relationships with people that don't want to have relationships with us. It's just a waste of energy. And finding that acceptance, finding that allowance, man, that helps create so much peace within ourselves. So then we can go on and we can go find the people that do want to spend the time with us, that do love us unconditionally, that do love us for who we are and not just what we do for them. What a beautiful experience. All of it is, because, it's been through my acceptance, right? That the painful things that I've gone through in my life have helped me appreciate all of it. Beyond the judgments, beyond the discernments, beyond the teachings, beyond anything else, to actually just be within it and move through it the best way we can. And sometimes when we get out of it, we're like, oof, man, that was a real struggle. I really dropped the ball a couple times, but you know what? I'm getting better. I'm getting better. Better and better every day in every way, because that's the way we grow. Whether we're cognitively, consciously aware of it or not. And it's usually in hindsight that we realize, wow, look at how far we've come. What a blessing it is to have everybody in our lives that we do, and thank God for the challenging ones that trigger us, because that shows us where we're not healed yet, where we haven't surrendered yet. The stories, the pains, either consciously or unconsciously, usually before the age 7, right, is what the ancients and the modern sciences say. So how do we move through all that stuff? With acceptance. You know, if you have cancer, accept that you have a disease, dis-ease, right? Something that's out of harmony within you. Cancer is actually trying to protect you in many aspects by creating that tumor. But we're not going to get into that now. But accept that you have it. Accept responsibility for what you did to allow to create the conditions so it was able to flourish like it was, because we all have cancer in us. It's just a matter of it takes root, just like a garden. You don't feed your plants in a garden. You feed the soil. The soil takes care of the plants. Richard Bronson once said in his Infinite Genius, if you will, his job was to take care of the employees, and his employees' jobs were to take care of the customers. And if he took care of the employees the right way, then they'll take care of the customers the right way. So he doesn't have to stress about the end goal. He works on what he can control. He creates and maintains the environment. The environment takes care of the rest. And that's what we need to do in our own lives. We have to create the environment for us to thrive. We have to create the environment for healing. We have to create the environment to evolve beyond whatever circumstances is going on in our life, and getting back to the cancer story, if you have cancer, and, I know I have some very dear friends of mine right now, and some of them are probably going to die from it. And doesn't matter what we can do. We do the best we can, right? Give them all the proper foods. We can take them and do all the proper things, and at the end of the day, if that's what was destined for them, that's what's going to happen, and we're not smarter than the universe. Consciousness, Mother Earth, all those different things has a bigger awareness about the whole agenda of all things, the totality of all things, and not just our personal self. That the personal self is the egoic self, and why we have effect on the collective nature, and the collective nature has effect on us. It's only an influence. And at the end of the day, we have free will choice. As hard as that is sometimes, at the end of the day, there isn't anything in our lives that we don't have some level of influence or control over. And maybe it's not what we desired, maybe it's not what we wanted, but it damn sure is probably what we needed for our highest evolution. If people actually were aware and actually cared about the condition of our planet, we wouldn't be talking about celebrities. We wouldn't be talking about politics. That's what our focus would be on. How are we creating these effects within our natural environment that's destroying the very fabric of our nature and our societies as a direct effect of that? Hi, Larkin.
Hey, oh my God, it worked.
Hey, there you are.
The spiral of death for 40 minutes. Sorry.
That's all right. I was like, man, we have about 10 minutes left.
You were still on. I got everybody in finally, but then I got the little, the circle of death going on.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can plug this back in and it still works.
Okay.
How are you guys? Hi, everyone. Hi, Natalie and Greg. Keep going, Chris. Don't let me interrupt you.
So we were like at a perfect intersection when you came in.
Oh,
awesome. So I was like, oh, perfect. Like, what a perfect time to pop in, because I wasn't mid-story. but we were just talking about acceptance and how it plays a part of in our awareness, and what are we being aware of, because that actually affects our collective, right?
Yeah.
And not only on an individual basis, but on a collective basis, and we can't change the collective basis until we've changed, till we shifted our individual acceptance of the part that we play, our responsibility, right? And then creating that example is creates the integrity. You never want to take directions from somebody how to do something when they've only read about it. Because even though they have the mental awareness of it, some would say knowledge, right? But until they've actually had to practice that principle or that action or that method, and they've gotten proficient at it, do we really want to take advice from them wholeheartedly? Because I remember when my son was little, he would say something and it was like, this kid's a genius. Like, he's teaching me so much about life that I wasn't aware of, and he doesn't have the conditioning that I had, or whatever. So so he helped me grow in ways because I was ready for the lesson, I think. Where a lot of parents tend to be very dismissive of their kids, like they don't know anything because they haven't gone through anything yet. So I guess you have to be careful with those rules.
Absolutely. No, it's true. You do. I think there's a difference between information and an experience, and there's a difference between knowing it intellectually and knowing something emotionally, because emotion is the mind and body, right? So you can know something intellectually, you can have the information, but it doesn't mean that you really know what to do with it or that you understand it.
Right.
So I think that's sort of a summary of kind of what you're getting at. And just because you learn something one way doesn't mean you know it in its application to everything else either.
Right.
No, I think the wise person knows that he or she knows nothing. Right? That in an infinity of dots, we know a very little bit.
Right.
And that it's in that awareness that, there's this infinite amount. I mean, there's infinite applications for everything you learn. And again, this goes back to what we've talked about so much, Chris, on here about thinking we know something, about being attached to our thoughts and our ideas of them. And what something meant to you at age 17 and what you knew and had learned of that maybe even your friends didn't understand or know how to apply, can be something very different than what you learn at 25 or what you know of that thing at 25. Right. So I think we have to be open to the fact that, not open-minded that we're not a gatekeeper for our experiences and what we learn, but we need to be open-minded in the fact that, we're always learning. There's something to be learned from everything in every situation. And when we do that, we have the opportunity to see opportunities we wouldn't see before, to recognize things we wouldn't recognize before, to make each and every situation better. Whereas if our ego always wants to think we know and we're right. And I'm sharing this because I think it's important to relate whatever it is, you've been talking about today back to the fact that we're human beings with a mind and a brain. And the brain allows us to have that physical reality experience and to have emotions and to have sensations and to feel pain and pleasure and all of that. But it connects us to the body. It connects our mind to the body. But mind is synonymous with ego, which is synonymous with thought. So again, my friends, the whole reason I became a mindset coach was all of this as a human comes back to your thoughts. And are you aware of them? What are your habits of thinking? What are your beliefs, which are repeated thoughts? How are you allowing them to run your life? And how are you learning to step up and access your power of choice, which we spoke about last week? And for those of you thinking, wow, this is repetitive, why is she talking about that again? One of the things that, I found Chris and I have in common when we share, or there's many things, but one of them is we've both discovered how simple things are. They may be hard, but they're simple. And they can all boil down to the same basic factors and components. That if you are aware of those things, and if you learn to manage those things, and if you learn the power of your choice with those factors, then you can do anything. You can heal, you can transform your life, you can do your part in creating transformation in the world. And very few people ever access that because they don't want to go through the discomfort of making a choice that is unfamiliar, of getting out of their comfort zone. They don't want to go through the work of taming the mind. But the truth is you have two very simple choices. One, you can struggle and suffer and put forth the same effort in your struggling and suffering and your constant effort to figure out how to create change and transformation and manifest what you want. Or you can learn to master the mind and put forth the same amount of effort and energy, but actually get desired results. It's pretty much that simple for everyone, no matter their race, their sex, their location, the amount of money that they have. All of those things are content, in the creation of it. But what you're doing from the inside out, what you're doing with those factors that Chris and I are talking about, that's what determines if you're standing in your power enough to manifest your best life and learn what you're here to learn, or if you're going to spend your life in survival mode.
Right.
And, it seems pretty obvious which choice we'd all prefer. The question is, what are you willing to do about it?
Yeah, what trade-offs are you willing to make?
And they're worth it. You're basically trading off habits that are uncomfortable to change.
Right.
Or that seem like more
gratification. Yeah.
Right. But in that end, it takes less energy than, bitching and complaining and fussing and being unhappy and having regrets and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun to kick the can every now and again. I don't know.
That's what most people think. That's why most people aren't creating transformation.
Right. KZ says, is there such a thing as free will when it comes to our thoughts and decisions, what we think and do, or is it all predestined, the end results? I think when you're an observer of your thoughts and your decisions, you have creative choice, which is free will. If you are enslaved and entrapped by your thoughts and your decisions, which means I think it, so it has to be true, you'll live life thinking that it was predestined and by faith, and you had little or no control over it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, Casey, I don't know if you were on last week, or was it the week before? One of the last 2 weeks we were talking about free will. Might have been 2 weeks ago. And we got into that pretty in depth. So you can go back and listen to that replay. But we got into that pretty in depth, and we were talking about, it was the week we were talking about collective and individual, and how we're given free will. We all have free will. And that there are universal laws set up to support that. And yeah, you were not on that week. That's correct. But you can listen to it. But it answers a lot of this. I think as a psychic medium, I find this question a lot. I mean, I can't, if I had a penny for every time someone asked me this question, I would be a billionaire. Really. It's interesting because you're given free will, but it is connected to the collective. So a lot of it is a lot of the reason why it seems like we don't have certain choices is because our 95% of our mind that we're unaware of, that I work with people on overcoming as a mindset coach and programming, that is basically what is running our human life here in a down-to-earth sense, which is why it's so important to become aware of that subconscious mind and bring it into our conscious mind, right? So the conscious mind that is listening to me right now, that's the 5% of your mind you're aware of. That's saying, man, this lady does not know what she's talking about. Boy, is she arrogant. Ooh, I really like her. Okay, that's your 5% of your mind. The 95% of your mind that are boosting and promoting who you hang out with, where you work, how much money you have, what shape you're in, what choices you make, what lessons you learn and don't learn from, what you're afraid of, what you believe. All of that is the 95% of your mind you're not aware of. That if you want to create transformation, you have to learn to change and program and become aware of. Okay? So when we're talking about free will, a lot of times people feel like they don't have free will, or they're told that they're not, because they have trouble changing things. And they believe that when we believe we do not have free will, we often live in a victim mentality that life is happening to us instead of because of us. Where in truth, if you have a good mindset coach, you learn and you discover for yourself that you can change your programming. You're either giving your power away and letting society and your past program you, or you're creating a set of beliefs and thought systems that, and emotions, which are the mind and the body, that allow you to create and manifest what you want. Okay. So that's part of it. And it's easy to dump it off and say, I don't have free will. This is just how it happens. Now that falls in line with the belief system that the church for thousands of years now has been trying to promote, which is that, you don't have a say in anything, and everything is predestined. You were born a sinner. Well, what does that do? As soon as you tell somebody that, it takes away their power, doesn't it? It makes them feel bad. It makes them feel depressed. It makes them feel under a thumb. It makes them feel helpless. It makes them feel like if they don't do what higher authorities tell them, like the church and the government, they're going to hell. That is an open door for that. That was to control people. So that is not true. I also find that a lot of psychic mediums are telling people it was in your earth, it was in your contract, and that's just how it is, and this is predestined. That's bullshit. How could you learn and grow and evolve? And God's source spirit is always learning, growing, and evolving, right? How could you learn, grow, evolve, and expand? What would be the point if you didn't have free will? If you were just in a moving play, like you were just a pawn in a game, what would be the point? The universe on every level is expanding. Okay, so you can choose to do what you will with our answers, but you have been given free will. It is divinely protected by source, by the angels, by your higher self. Okay. But I want to throw in one more thing that I find people get confused. They confuse the 95% of your mind that you're unaware of, but they also confuse. This is why you guys always hear me saying, remember who you are as an eternal soul. Remember who you are as an eternal soul. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Glad this resonates with you. I'm telling people to remember who they are as an eternal soul, because you shouldn't have to rely on Chris or myself, or a doctor or a therapist, or a teacher, or a politician, or a psychic. When you remember who you are as a core being, everything changes, because you can take the guidance and advice and teachings from others, and not do you agree with it, but does it resonate? Do you know that eternally? Because you have eternal wisdom as a soul. So The free will part is the soul part. So you might say you're 95% of your subconscious mind, which is human, might be saying, oh my God, I want to be rich. I'm tired of being poor. I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of having no money. I'm tired of suffering. Okay. That might be your 5% of your conscious mind. Meanwhile, your subconscious mind is saying, you'll always be poor. You'll always suffer because your parents did, and you're no good, and you can't make money, and you're not worthy and deserving. Okay. So you got those things in contradiction. But then the real question is, what does your free will of your soul say? What did the free will of your soul decide you needed to come to this world to do? Because that's really why you're here, right? The ultimate say of free will for you is not your ego. It's your soul. It's the part of you that got together with your spirit guides that say, hey, I didn't get this right the way I wanted it the last few times. I want to learn that. Or I want to go down and make a difference in that world. Okay. That is your ultimate free will. So your soul might be saying, you need to learn to be alone in this life and enjoy it and get to know who you are and build that strength as a human. And your ego might be saying, oh my God, more than anything, I don't want to be alone. I just want someone in my life. But if the free will of your soul said, you need to learn this for your evolution, and guess what? That's the lesson you're going to have. So, Casey, what I would say to you is, make sure you're not confusing those three, because everyone does. And the other thing is that keep in mind that things are always working out for you, that your soul actually has the ultimate say in the guidance of your evolution, because Source has given you that free will, and it will override your ego and the way you're thinking and what you think you want. And when you learn what you're here to learn and you're doing what you're here to do, then you will see a shift, because it is actually your soul that gets to choose and has that ultimate say. So if you're having issues with that, it's time to remember who you are. It's time to have a conversation with your soul and your spirit guides, your soul and your angels. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
And then accept the lessons and the teachings that you're getting, because they're not going to be comfortable, nope. And I think that's what keeps people from free will, right? True free will is because there is a trade-off. It's an energetic exchange, anything we do. So, some might call it consequences. I like the word trade-off better. It's, instead of hanging out with my friends and going and doing something fun this weekend, I'm going to sit at home and I'm going to work on this, and this, and this, because that's what I feel called to do more than that. Even though that's fun. And, my friends are really disappointed that I'm not going, whatever. I'm choosing to do this for the betterment of myself, for my evolution, my whatever. That is a free will choice. And you get that. We have that ability to accept how we choose to respond in our life. And if we're always chasing the path of least resistance, or always chasing immediate gratification, that's like the carrot on the string. And we're not looking at the rest of the environment of what's going on, in my opinion.
I want to share this. I think this is really important. People have more power than they think. And this is, we'll get to your comment in just a second, Casey. This is really significant, guys. This is why you always hear me saying, remember who you are, right? And question everything. Question what you're thinking. Question what I'm saying. Question what Chris is saying. Question it, because nothing has meaning until you give it meaning. Mm-hmm. And usually it is that 95% of your mind you're unaware of that is going to be assigning meaning to things. And that means you're going to be repeating the past and the things that you wanted to change. And so if you take what Chris just shared and you summarize it up and you say, you know what? Like for me, what I had to do, like when it came to relationships, is I literally had to say, okay, I'm going to do the opposite of everything I've done before. I'm going to choose the opposite of everything I have before. And that worked. It threw me for a loop, but it changed my perception. It freed me from being locked into my habits. It forced me out of my comfort zone. And even if you have to do those things for a tiny amount of time, you know, you guys don't have to say from now on. I find one of the biggest mistakes of my coaching clients is they'll say from now on. And I want you guys to make mistakes. That's important. But you have to learn from them as well. How about just saying for the next hour, for the next day, just for the weekend, I'm going to respond the opposite that I always do to people. Just for the weekend, I'm going to make the opposite choices of what I would typically make and see if that starts to make a difference. You know, it's when our mind starts to say, oh my God, forever from now on, we get stuck. Just try things in bite-sized pieces, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to create change and wiggle room.
Well, and I think that's why healing modalities like Reiki or the 12-step program or, you know, all these different things, they focus on just today, you know, because the more we feed the mind with this is going to be a forever thing, the more energy it takes to visualize that. And I think like you were suggesting, chunking it down into, you know, I know we talk about this with mindset stuff all the time. I'm just going to do it for 5 minutes. Like I don't feel like doing the dishes right now. So I'm only going to do the dishes for 5 minutes. And then I'll go and do the other thing that I want to do. And then the next thing you know, you finished all the dishes. You know, and it's like getting through that stagnant energy, or that resistant energy rather, can be pretty daunting. So make it as easy on yourself as you can. Do we want to take Casey's comment there? I'm gonna have to wrap it up. So
yeah, I was just reading it first. It's not a silly question, Casey. There are no silly questions. I think it's actually a great question. You know, the answer is yes and no. You have to understand that we all come as souls. We don't say, okay, I'm going to come to souls to cause trouble, which I think a lot of psychics say that's the case. We don't say that. We all come as souls to learn and for the greater good. There are other energies that are, you know, negative energies that we have to deal with. There are negative souls and negative energies that come into the world that are, you know, but you got to understand that in this world as well, when you're talking about war, that again is an egoic thing. So the things that happen, do they know? Yes, they can see the challenge that they come into. It's more like they would come with a challenge of, can they come into a position of power and do the thing that is better for the greater good, or will they get sucked into being power hungry? It's more like that. It's not that they say, oh, we're going to come down together and we're going to cause a war. That's not how it works. It's that once they're here incarnate in that position or in that family or in that role, the question is, what will they do with it? Are they going to get caught up in the egoic aspect and the power aspect and become a part of that collective entity, that collective egoic entity that is still learning from war? Do they even have the ability to prevent it, depending on, you know, who other leaders are? I think, Casey, what's important to understand is that we all come taking the risk to have our human ego, collective ego selves, and those challenges lead us to do things or make choices that we would not make on the other side, where we're more conscious and aware. And we don't necessarily realize the damage, or if we get sucked into our ego, we know the damage and we don't care. And that's part of our lesson in our learning. And that's okay, because that's what this world is for. It's for coming and learning and making these mistakes. Because ultimately, no matter how many people die, and I'm not belittling this, guys. I'm just saying you got to understand there's a bigger picture here. As humans, we can be tormented, we can suffer, we can die as a human. But eternally, this isn't what's happening. We are peace, we are joy, we are honest, right? There is no such thing as a lie in consciousness. So I think it's important, Casey, especially for you, to really put into perspective, this existence is just a temporary existence. And it doesn't make it any less significant. But it isn't the end all, which is why it's so important everybody remembers who they are. Because when you do, you realize even the horrific things that happen in this world, that everything is still always working out for everyone, that everything will be okay energetically and eternally. And it allows you to have a different perspective on the significance of maybe some of the things that here that are so horrific that we are hopefully learning and evolving from. Okay, because on the other side, there isn't that contrast. And I hope that makes sense. That's sort of a quick general answer. Go ahead, Chris.
I mean, you summed it up.
Okay. That seems to be my thing. Sum it up.
Yeah. Thank God bless you.
It's not me. It just comes in, dude. I'm telling you. Just comes in.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And I think Casey got that too. I want to, before we pop off, Chris, do you want to remind everybody about our event on the 30th? And then I'll invite them to the event on the 9th.
Yeah.
So you guys know we have some things going on.
Yeah. So on the 30th at 7 p.m., we're holding an online, I guess, webinar, you would call it, called Elder Speak. And this is a little bit different than I think a lot of other things, because it's more of a Q&A session where people can come and ask their questions of our expert elder panel. Larkin will be on this month, as well as Matthew Campbell, and they call him Blue Hail, and then there's Marilee Clark is going to be there. The story of I just got a text from Marilee Clark. She lives out in the middle of the boonies and doesn't have internet in Missouri. She got a ride to come to my house to broadcast, to be a part of this event. So you want to talk about determination. That is amazing to me. So Marilee Clark will be on as well. And I'm really looking forward to I love these events. So highly recommended. It's free. You can go on to any of my pages for sure, and find the event and register on Zoom. Like I said, it's free. And if you want to donate to our cause, great. But the whole goal here is to share awarenesses and to hold space for one another, so we can walk in greater harmony. Yes, I agree, Raven. Raven's going to be on. Mark Thomas is going to be on as well. He's my co-host. So, and then Larkin, you want to talk about our other event?
Yes. So from the 7 p.m. Chris was referring to is also EDT. So you guys can translate that time zone if you need to. Also on the 9th of June, Chris and I are hosting a prayer sphere. I called it a prayer sphere because, we want it to be fourth and fifth dimensional here, not just like a flat circle. And we are going to be talking about different forms of prayer, individual prayer, collective prayer. and running you guys through some different techniques you can do for healing and other forms of prayer. How can it be powerful? How it can be effective and ineffective, so you guys know the difference, because there's a lot of information flying around out there. And we're going to take that into practice during this time as well. So you can find that listed on either of our groups and pages. And you know, it's a free event. You don't have to register anything. And I will be posting how to connect with that. I think right now I left it on Steamyard because I didn't know how it was going to go for the first time. That way people could do Q&A, and if we need to bring someone up as a guest live on here, we can. It's a lot easier than having people like register and send out Zoom links. So that's what we're doing for this first one, and we'll see how it goes. So anyway, awesome. That's it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Larkin, as always, thank you again for your time and your brilliance and your presence.
Yours too.
Thank you. And till next week, much love and gratitude for everything you are, everything you choose to do and choose to be. And we will see you next week, 12 o'clock on Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, yeah. Subscribe to our Facebook channel and YouTube channel, The Enhance Your World Show. So,
yes.
Hey, look, I plugged it for once. Hey, look at that. Look at me.
Oh, good for you.